we've been often when we've been covering like how is the server population doing on these servers. We've really only had one thing to go based on, and that's how many people are online on the servers. That's been our only stat that we've been able to go based by. Like we haven't been able to go any deeper in our in our analysis. Now the average player numbers have been dropping like very steadily. Well, faster lately, very much faster lately, but we haven't really had much data to look at. However, now some god called wow underscore cac made a site called, what is it called? stuff.cacqualab.ovh. And this is actually really interesting because for the first time we get to have a more in-depth look at the player numbers in World of Warships. So this is only the EU server now. And keep in mind that the EU server is the healthiest and best performing server in the game by a massive margin these days. So this is how it's going on the EU server. So first of all, player gain slash loss per month. This is people with 0 random battles and 0 win rate, meaning it doesn't take into account anything. It doesn't take into account how many battles you have. It doesn't take into account how much win rate you have. And this is basically based on account creation date and last battle date, ignoring the last 2 months. So if it hasn't been in, I think if you haven't logged in 2 months, it counts as a loss of the player. And well, account creation has obviously been steadily dropping off. There was a small spike in player gain here, but in response, the player loss has become increasingly worse. Now, games always lose and gain players. That's how games work in general. Some people start playing, some people stop playing. That's how it works. But obviously, the player loss chart has become much worse than the player gain. And if you just make it based on net gain per and slash loss per month, well, then it looks like this all of a sudden. It started going negative. Well, it kind of plateaued honestly around here, and this is of course 2020 is the CV rework, and ever since the CV rework, it's been going steadily. Then came submarines, and now it's been going steadily down until the point where, well, obviously, the trend. There's no real nice way of looking at this trend except it's brutal. It's brutal. This is not a good way to look at it. Like no matter how you look at it, this is very brutal in terms of players falling off. This is involving player gain slash loss per month, players with plus 200 random battles. So this is people who have created an account and then played over 200 random battles. So this was just people who have just created an account. This is people who have played an account and played over 200 random battles. Well, it's actually even worse because there's less new players who have started. There's less new players who have actually started. So the net gain, well, it's pretty brutal here as well. It starts plateauing even earlier, 2018, and then it just drops off even further and even faster. The blue line basically disappears entirely already here, and we had a steady base, but then really these last couple of years of wargaming decisions have really they're really showing themselves. People wonder why some content creators like I am very critical of wargaming's decision making recently, and it's like because they're killing the game, and all the numbers prove that they're killing the game. Do you not understand that people like me want the game to live, to thrive, to succeed, and to be fun to play? And everything wargaming is doing has the exact opposite effect. It becomes even worse, though, when you take into account people who have played over 2,000 random battles and have over 55% win rate. So this is what you would call the good players. These are the players that are good, above average, the good players. So what has happened with the good players? Well, the good players started leaving earlier. And in the last couple of months, the amount of good players leaving this game has become absolutely fucking brutal. There's really no other way of looking at it. The player loss among the good players has been... It's been really fucking brutal. Like this red chart is dropping hard, and it's getting so much worse. People have often said that the quality of random battles has gotten worse, the quality of gameplay has gotten worse, but we haven't really had much facts to back up. It's been mostly like speculation, mostly it feels worse, which is obviously, and people who run matchmaking monitor, they say, well, we see a lot more bad players on the teams, but now, oof, it's gotten even worse. Look at the amount of good players. Yeah, I mean, the numbers are very small. The numbers are extremely small when it comes to good players. There haven't been a lot of people who are actually good and have played over 2,000 battles. These are, I wouldn't call veterans, but people who have improved and gotten good at the game. And the good players, well, CV rework and submarines and hybrids and all this bullshit has done a very effective job of driving away all the people who were most passionate about the game. So, great success on that one. Great success on that one. This is active players out of all the player numbers that are registered for World of Warships. I assume active players. This is. I assume if you played one battle in the last 3 months, you count as an active player. So this is the percentage of all the accounts created. And this is numbers of active players. Basically, the same people who have played in the last 3 months. Or no, sorry, number of active players each month. So this is how many of these have been online. And yeah. That's this at the end of this chart is starting to look at like the launch of the game. This is if we had in 2020 1.1 million active players and now we're approaching 400,000. That's a fucking brutal drop in player numbers. Like absolutely brutal. And it's been accelerating very quickly. This is 2022. This was 2022, and this is when they really started going ham on their shit decisions. This is where everything about war, like it was bad. It was bad 2020, it was bad 2021, but 2022 is when they really started pumping out the dumbest, worst shit that they possibly could. And obviously that decision has heavily accelerated the drop in player numbers. Heavily accelerated. Like when you say a company is driving a game into the ground, this is what it looks like when a company is driving a game into the ground. There's no way to look at this from a positive perspective. This is fucking tragic. This is fucking tragic. This is there's no beautiful way to formulate this. This is Wargaming's own actions just driving it down. And it's terrible to look at. It's fucking terrible to look at. Oh, interesting. How many people have hidden profiles? 0.6%. Players in a clan. I mean, to be fair, if they're inactive players, they might have gotten kicked and so forth. Win rate distribution. Player distribution, normal distribution. So most people have around 47, 48. What the fuck is this? Oh shit. 49.9. This is... That's an interesting peak. Yeah, this is what I mean though. When you look at people who are super Unicum, this is how small of a percentage we're talking about to reach these numbers. This is how small of a percentage actually reach these numbers. That's pretty interesting. Oh, this is if you have over 1,000 battles, win rate distribution. This was only... Was this over 100? This is over 1,000. Here it becomes very clear that 48... this area is the biggest one, and then reaching these becomes harder. Bell curve, yeah. Average win rate by random battles. Okay, so people do improve to a certain degree, but the people really plateau around here, don't they? Holy shit. Once they reach 10k battles, if you haven't gotten better, you basically stagnate. That's interesting. Win rate versus division win rate. This is player. Is it random win rate versus division win rate? Player count by random battles. Oh, this is how many people who have played. Holy shit! There's people out there with over 52,000 random battles, champ. Imagine that. People out there with over 52,000 random battles. That's fucking absurd. Holy shit. But you gotta note that all of these numbers, these depressing looking numbers that we looked at here, these depressing, awful looking numbers, this is the EU server. The EU server is the best performing server. If you look at just players online on EU, well, we used to be up. This is starting from 2022. This is starting from 2022. We used to be up here, and we've dropped about here. It's bad, sure, but it's not that bad. Like, there's been a slight drop off on EU. EU is, well, slight, but like the drop off isn't as brutal on EU. Despite when we look at the real numbers, we see just how bad it's been. But EU is still the best performing one, because then when you look at servers like Russia, Russia is a complete tragedy. Russia was almost as big as EU back in the days. It's down here at 10k now. We had a small special operation that happened around here that drafted half the player base, and then ever since then the player base has just been steadily declining on the server regardless. So Russia is less than half the size of EU, and the same thing applies to all the other servers. Like what we just looked at was the best performing server. Asia, we used to be here, we're now here, we've dropped off here. This is all from 2022. Every single server has been declining, and the server that we looked at now, the detailed numbers, was the best performing one. This is NA. There was a time where apparently NA peaked all the way up here. Nowadays we're down here. And that was the best performing server. And then you wonder why people are upset with Wargaming's decision when you see the actual impact these decisions have on the game. They're driving people away. Hello? Of course we're upset with their decisions. They're making the game worse. The game is objectively becoming a worse experience to play, and especially people who are good at the game, especially people who are experienced, are all leaving it. And even the new players are clearly not joining in the same numbers that people are just objectively leaving. Like, they're not offsetting the drop-off by any means. Like, getting one guy who enjoys submarines into the game and in return driving off 20 people who dislike submarines is not a good trade deal, okay? This is not how you build up a game. This is how you drive it down even faster. It's fucking stupid. And it hurts to watch. It hurts to watch because it's my favorite game. And Wargaming are fucking sabotaging it. Now again, I was gone for a week and I can be back, and Wargaming has released some dumb fucking Colossus abomination that flies around dev striking other CVs and cruisers. I'd be fine if it just killed CVs, but you know that anything that can effectively kill a carrier can also effectively kill half the other ships in the game. So, GG. Fun times, man.